Welcome to NFL Nexus. I'm your host, and I'm so glad you're here today. We are about to unpack a story that, honestly, it feels like it was ripped straight from a Hollywood script. We're talking about a single signature on a contract, a signature that didn't just cause a ripple effect, it triggered a full-blown earthquake in the league. This is a move that, at the same time, managed to resurrect a fallen dynasty and throw the reigning Super Bowl champs into a complete tailspin. This, my friends, is the Kenneth Walker effect. Now, if you love digging into the nitty-gritty of how franchises are built and, sometimes broken, do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, give this deep dive a like, and drop me a comment. What's the single most impactful free agent signing you've ever seen? It really does help the channel more than you know. All right, let's get into the chaos.
And it really did. You got to picture the scene, right? The legal tampering window opens up, and usually it's kind of a slow burn. You get a few rumors floating around, maybe a mid-level signing here or there, just a slow trickle of info while teams feel each other out. But not this time. No. This was an instant detonation. The moment the clock hit noon, the entire power structure of the league just got thrown into complete disarray. It wasn't a ripple, it was a tidal wave that came crashing across both the AFC and the NFC, and it pulled two of the league's biggest franchises in completely opposite directions. The balance of power in the AFC, which for the first time in years really felt like it was up for grabs, well, it suddenly just snapped right back into place. And over in the NFC, the team sitting on top of the mountain was suddenly looking down into a terrifyingly deep canyon.
And that, right there, is the big question we're going to explore today. This is a story about a stunning, almost unbelievable reversal of fortune, a narrative that pivoted entirely on the ink drying on a single piece of paper. So on one side, you've got a team that just last season looked totally broken, a dynasty that seemed like it was in ruins, their superstar quarterback on the sidelines, and they were just searching for any kind of spark to reignite that fire. And then, on the other side, you've got the newly crowned champions, a team that looked invincible, a model of consistency and pure power, now staring at this huge, gaping void where the very heart of their championship identity used to be. So how does this even happen? How does one guy become the catalyst for both a glorious restoration and a champion's crisis? It's a fascinating look at cause and effect, and we're going to break down every single angle. All right, let's start peeling back the layers of this deal that just completely altered the league. To really truly grasp the magnitude of what went down, to understand the shockwaves this sent through every single front office, we need to rewind the clock just a little bit. Just a few hours before the news broke, to a time when the NFL landscape looked entirely different.
The contrast here, it could not have been more stark. In one corner, you have the Kansas City Chiefs. For the better part of a decade, they were the NFL's absolute gold standard, right? An offensive juggernaut that just seemed unstoppable. But that 2025 season, it was a jarring detour into mediocrity. The offense sputtered, they had uncharacteristic mistakes, the defense couldn't pick up the slack, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they looked vulnerable. A fallen dynasty looking for answers. And in the other corner, the Seattle Seahawks, fresh off a dominant, absolutely awe-inspiring run, hoisting the Lombardi Trophy as Super Bowl LX champs. They weren't just the best team, they were this intimidating physical force sitting at the absolute peak of the sport with a clear, powerful identity.
And then the bombshell dropped. The notification that just lit up every single phone in the league. Kenneth Walker III, the undisputed engine of that Seattle championship team, the Super Bowl MVP, and without a shadow of a doubt the single most coveted player on the open market, was leaving the champs. And he wasn't just going to another contender. He was joining the very team that was desperate to reclaim the throne that Seattle now occupied. This wasn't just about filling a roster spot. This was a power play of the highest order. It was a direct poaching of the champion's most valuable asset, a move designed to simultaneously make themselves stronger while critically wounding a rival.
And the Chiefs didn't just show interest, oh no, they backed up a Brinks truck, a 3-year, $43.05 million contract. Now for a franchise that was reportedly dealing with a pretty tight salary cap situation, this wasn't just a casual expense. This was their GM, Brett Veach, pushing all his chips right to the center of the table. To make it work, sources said they had to perform some serious financial gymnastics. A clever restructuring of Travis Kelce's contract, making the really tough call to release a veteran starting lineman. It signaled a crystal-clear strategy. They had identified their single biggest weakness, an unreliable, non-threatening running game, and they were willing to pay a massive, top-of-the-market premium to get the absolute best solution available.
And this quote right here from Clutch Points, it absolutely nails the league's immediate reaction. This wasn't just seen as a smart football move. It was seen as an act of aggression, a declaration of war. You have to understand, the rest of the AFC, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, they finally had a moment to breathe.
For one season, Kansas City looked mortal. It really felt like the playing field was finally level. This signing was the Chiefs kicking the door back in, violently slamming that window shut and announcing to everybody that their brief time on the mat was officially over. The message was loud and clear. The throne was only vacant temporarily.
So if this move really was a declaration of war, then Kenneth Walker was the perfect weapon. But to truly understand why he was the ideal solution, why this wasn't just about signing any good running back, but about signing this specific running back, you first have to fully appreciate the wreckage he was being brought in to fix.
That 2025 season in Kansas City, it was way more than just a down year. It felt like a complete system failure. For a team and a fan base that had grown so accustomed to offensive fireworks and these deep, inevitable playoff runs, it was a brutal test of their resolve. The electricity that always crackled through Arrowhead Stadium, that feeling of inevitability, it was replaced with this quiet, gnawing uncertainty. All the little cracks in the roster that had been so skillfully papered over by sheer quarterback brilliance for years, well, they suddenly became these gaping, unfixable craters that just swallowed their season whole.
And the numbers from that season are just staggering for a team of their caliber. They didn't just miss the playoffs, they stumbled to a 6-11 finish. But look a little closer. The offense, which we've all hailed as the juggernaut of the NFL, was just a shadow of its former self, ranking a dismal 25th in rushing. For an Andy Reid offense, that's catastrophic. It meant they were constantly in 2nd and long, 3rd and long, which just allows defenses to pin their ears back and rush the quarterback without any fear. And that led directly to being ranked 21st in scoring. This wasn't just a slump, it was a complete identity crisis. For the first time in the entire Andy Reid era, they looked beatable, they looked human, and it all culminated in one devastating, season-defining moment.
It was the final brutal blow in a season that was full of them. Week 15, the unthinkable happened. Patrick Mahomes, the cornerstone of the entire franchise, goes down with a catastrophic knee injury, a torn ACL and LCL. It was a heartbreaking moment that didn't just end their faint playoff hopes, it cruelly exposed just how vulnerable their entire offensive structure really was. Without their superstar quarterback able to perform his usual off-script magic and extend plays, the lack of a consistent ground game became a fatal flaw. That rotating door of running backs just couldn't carry the load or take the pressure off a backup QB, and the whole house of cards just collapsed.
So you see, Kenneth Walker isn't just a Band-Aid here. He is a comprehensive cure for everything that was wrong with them. While the Chiefs were collapsing, he was putting together a career year. He silenced any lingering critics about durability by playing a full 17-game slate, carrying the load all the way through the playoffs. He became the workhorse engine of Seattle's Super Bowl run, capping it all off with that MVP performance. But it's his skill set that is so key. He's a true three-down threat who brings this rare blend of elite vision, patience to let his blocks develop, and a violent contact balance that the Chiefs just haven't had since the early days of Kareem Hunt. He's the ultimate force multiplier, the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card for Patrick Mahomes, a player who fundamentally changes the math for opposing defenses and forces them to take a man out of coverage.
But as we know, in the unforgiving economy of the NFL, one team's salvation often comes at another team's expense. For every single bit of renewed hope that flooded into Kansas City, an equal measure of chaos and uncertainty started brewing up in the Pacific Northwest. So now let's look at the other side of this coin, the crisis that this signing left behind for the reigning champions.
This is the question that immediately started echoing through the Seahawks front office, through the locker room, and across their entire fan base. I mean, it's one thing to lose a key role player in free agency. It happens every single year, it's part of the business. But it is another thing entirely to lose the man who was just named the most valuable player on the game's biggest stage. He wasn't just a part of their offense, he was their offensive identity. He embodied their physical, punishing style of football. How do you possibly fill a void that large? How do you replace the soul of your team?
And as the Seahawks front office began to furiously whiteboard potential solutions, looking at the remaining free agents, scouting trade targets, they quickly realized that losing Kenneth Walker was just the visible tip of a very large and very dangerous iceberg. The problem lurking just beneath the surface, a detail that was known inside the building but not yet widely understood outside of it, was about to make their situation much, much worse. Their seemingly stable and deep running back room was suddenly, terrifyingly, on the verge of complete collapse.
And here it is. This is the devastating detail that elevates the situation from a major but, manageable loss to a potential franchise-altering crisis. Zach Charbonnet, the powerful number 2 back, the guy everyone in the building and in the media just assumed would seamlessly step into the lead role, had himself suffered a torn ACL during that very same championship playoff run.
With his return timetable for the 2026 season completely up in the air and no guarantee he'd be the same player when he came back, Seattle wasn't just looking for a new RB1, they were staring at a depth chart with virtually no proven healthy options. Their position of strength, the engine of their team, had completely evaporated overnight.
So with their Super Bowl MVP gone and his primary backup sidelined indefinitely, the Seahawks were forced into a desperate pivot. The top-tier running backs in free agency were already off the market. They got snapped up within the first few hours. The remaining options were, well, uninspiring. Aging veterans looking for one last payday. So with their hands tied, they turned their eyes to the upcoming NFL draft, and their scouting department's focus sharpened on a player right in their own backyard.
Enter Jonah Coleman, a running back from the University of Washington. The promise is clear. He's a 228-pound thumper, a classic north-south runner who excels in a zone-blocking scheme, patiently waiting for a crease and then just exploding through it with power. He's not going to dance in the backfield. He's going to get the yards that are blocked for him, and then some, by running through contact. He's also a high-character player, voted to team captain. But the risks are just as obvious. He lacks that elite game-breaking speed that Walker had. You know, the kind of speed that turns a 10-yard gain into a 60-yard touchdown. He's a projected day 3 draft pick, which means you're not getting a blue-chip prospect. And the biggest question of all looms, can a late-round rookie really be expected to immediately carry the heavy workload for a team trying to defend a Super Bowl title? It's a massive, franchise-defining gamble.
Now, while he might be a day 3 prospect, his college production is nothing to scoff at. Over his career at Arizona and Washington, he racked up over 3,000 rushing yards and, importantly, over 1,100 receiving yards with 35 touchdowns. That receiving number is key. It shows he's not just a two-down grinder who has to come off the field on third down. He has reliable hands. He's proven he can be a productive safety valve in the passing game, even if he's not some dynamic route runner. The numbers suggest he has the versatility to contribute. The existential question for Seattle is whether that college production can translate from day one. Because with Charbonnet's health in doubt, they don't have the luxury of a slow developmental ramp-up period. They need a starter, and they need one now.
So when you put all the pieces together, the desperation of a fallen dynasty in Kansas City, the sudden cascading crisis in Seattle, and the one elite player connecting their fates, what you get is a fundamental and immediate power shift across the entire league. So let's look at the final summary of this one seismic transaction.
This really just lays out the stark reality of the situation. Look at the Chiefs column. They go from a franchise reeling from a disastrous 6-11 season, with their superstar QB injured and their offense in shambles, to being instantly rebalanced, fortified, and thrust right back into the Super Bowl conversation as a clear favorite. Now look at the Seahawks, a complete and brutal reversal. They go from being the undisputed champions of the football world, the team on top of the mountain, to a franchise facing a massive void at the heart of their offense, compounded by critical injury uncertainty. Two completely different paths, two opposite trajectories, all set in motion by one man's signature on one contract. And that's where we're left with two massive gambles just hanging in the balance. The Chiefs are betting that a single, elite player can be the cure-all for a broken offense and the final piece to restore a dynasty. The Seahawks are betting that their culture and their coaching can weather the storm, that they can survive the loss of their MVP, and maybe, just maybe, plug an enormous hole with a late-round rookie. It's a fascinating question that is going to define the upcoming season and perhaps the next several years for both of these franchises. So which bet would you take?
And that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you so much for watching NFL Nexus. I truly want to know what you think. Which team's gamble is going to pay off? Are the Chiefs a lock for the Super Bowl now, or are the Seahawks being totally underestimated in their ability to rebuild on the fly? Let me know your full take in the comments below, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and give this presentation a like. It is the best way to help us keep making more content just like this.
And one last thing, if you enjoy these breakdowns and you want a really great way to support our work here at the channel, check out our line of NFL coloring books. They're a fantastic way to share your love of the game with the next generation of fans. Perfect for kids, grandkids, and honestly, they're a pretty great way for adults to unwind too. They're a lot of fun. You can find the link right there in the description, or you can just scan the QR code on your screen right now. Thanks again for your support, and we'll see you for the next story.